Welcome to the Wisdom That Breathes channel. Across all our platforms, we try to share wisdom which is relevant and accessible to everyone. But on this particular platform, we go deeper into some of the ancient principles found within the scriptures. If you find some of the terminology difficult or inaccessible, then go over to our Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll be able to find other content which is perhaps more relatable. Thank you and enjoy the wisdom that breathes.
As Nanda Gopa Prabhu comes up, I'll just remind him that I have strategically kept my danda with me.
It wouldn't be the first time someone who is spiritual has used violence. Okay, so we're going to get straight into it. I'm going to be as respectful as I possibly can because you are a Swami. But I have to know, what do you practically do for the world? As far as I'm aware, you've never paid any taxes. I know we're in Dubai, so no one pays taxes here. But specifically, I want to know, what do you actually do to contribute to the world in a meaningful way?
Are you talking about me as an individual or the Hare Krishna movement?
I want to start with you, and then we'll talk about the Hare Krishna movement generally.
We'll get personal first.
Yes.
I'm a very small soul, although I'm 6'5" tall. However, in my life, I've tried to contribute to making the world a better place. When I was young, I looked at the world. And I saw and I asked myself, what can I do to make the world a better place? Einstein, he said something very beautiful. You can't solve the problems of the world with the same type of thinking that created them in the first place. And so I looked at the world and I saw a world that needed a new way of thinking. I saw a world that needed more spirituality. When I saw the problems of the world and I went back to the root, economic, political, social, all of these problems, I saw that the root was a lack of spirituality. And so what I tried to do in my own humble way to make the world a better place is to share spiritual knowledge.
And that sounds really, yeah, you can applaud, we can applaud. I see that I have a very partial audience here. I saw with all the Hare Krishnas going on, so that's okay. But definitely I can understand that the sentiment is very nice, that spirituality does good for the world. But I don't see practically, so you mentioned the social problems, you talked about the economic problems, the political problems. How is it that actually you sharing spirituality is benefiting the world in any way?
You see, sometimes you have children.
I do.
Yeah.
Children, yeah.
And you send them to school.
And a very excellent school nearby. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And how many years is it before you see the effect of their education in terms of a practical benefit for you?
It can take time.
It can take time, right? So education, but you never hesitated, right, to send your children to school because you saw the value of education. So just like you send your children to school, you pay lots of money, you relocate to other parts of the world, you invest all your energy to give them the best education, yet you don't see the effects of that immediately, but you know that if I give them an education, then the future is bright. And therefore, the full effect of the education that we're giving to the world may not be seen immediately. But the spiritual principles that we're offering people will help society actually alleviate the most acute problems that are there. However, I will also say that as Hare Krishnas, we don't just give people knowledge. We also go out into the world, we feed people, we help people with problems in their mental health, we help solve crises in emergency zones around the world, so we also do a lot of practical things.
And I have to say, I have seen that. I have seen that the Hare Krishnas do some very good things around the world. But I'm very interested to know practically, let's take some of the situations going on in the world at the moment. So, the world does feel like it's on fire at the moment. And, there's war zones everywhere you can think. How is it your knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita or you sharing these different mantras will actually help? I know you said it can take time. So are you saying if everybody reads the Gita after some time, the wars will stop? I'd like to understand how it's actually going to help the world.
What we see in the world is an incredible greed, an incredible searching for material power, material wealth. If you look at all the wars in the world, although they may be under the garb of different reasons, sometimes even people attribute religion to the cause of war, but when you actually look closely, then what you see is most war around the world is to do with power, resource, money, and basically greed. And so as we teach people an inner happiness, an inner satisfaction, as we reorientate people's vision to not just search after the material, but to value their spiritual quality, to see the spirituality in others, then what we'll actually see is much greater respect, much greater feeling of community, much greater tolerance and accommodation of each other. And as I said, this takes time. So in the meantime, we also do practical things. So it's kind of like, would you prefer to be in a hospital which only had nurses, or would you prefer to be in a hospital which only had doctors? Which one would you prefer?
I'd like both.
You'd like both?
Yes.
Yeah. Because if you only have a hospital full of nurses, then you might be comfortable in the hospital, but you'll never get out. And if you only have a hospital of doctors, then you might be dead before you get the operation. And so spirituality is like the doctor, which gives the ultimate solution. And the nurses are like the day-to-day help that's given. Modern welfare work is just like a hospital full of nurses. While it's commendable, it doesn't actually help to solve the problem at the root. And on the other hand, we are not just professing to go around the world giving knowledge without practical help. So we are just like you. We want a hospital with both nurses and doctors. And what we're trying to provide is the ultimate solutions.
Yeah, please, by all means. It was a very comprehensive answer. Thank you so much. One, I've got to be honest. I think that the reason I have a real issue with religion generally is because I just see so much hypocrisy. So much hypocrisy. And specifically, it feels like the more spiritual or religious someone becomes, the more judgmental, the more condescending, the more patronizing, and the more hypocritical they often become. You gave the example yourself that many wars, on one level at least, are attributed to religion because they believe my religion is the best, and therefore I am better than the rest. So how is it possible that we see so much hypocrisy within a path of supposed purity?
We see hypocrisy in every sphere of life. Have you ever met a hypocritical politician?
I've never met one that isn't hypocritical, yes.
Have you ever met a doctor or someone in a profession of public service who hasn't lived up to their ideals? Yes. Do we trust everything the media tells us? No. Do we feel that the way things are marketed to us in the world are completely true? No. But we have to live in this world, and we have to take the best of what we can from every single situation. I'll be the first to admit to you that there is hypocrisy in religion. In fact, if I'm honest, even I've been hypocritical. However, that doesn't mean we have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can still see that within something in which there is hypocrisy, there is still good, there is still benefit, there is still purity. Instead of measuring a religion by all of those examples of letdown, what we can also measure religious and spiritual traditions is the incredible example of pure spiritualists who have done incredible things to help the world. Would you say that there are spiritual people who have displayed incredible levels of sacrifice, who have made the world a better place?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And so where does that come from? That purity comes from religion. And when we go into a religion, it's our responsibility to grasp the essence of that religion and live up to the high ideals.
Very nice, thank you. So one thing that's been bothering me, I had a friend who became very interested in spirituality. And what I realized very early on was that the reason they became interested in spirituality was because they weren't very successful in the material world. So they didn't do very well at school, they didn't do very well...
You're not talking about me here, are you?
You went to a very good university, I happen to know. So, no, the point being is that actually they used spirituality as a justification for their underachievement. And so we see people that maybe they aren't practicing spirituality but are very successful in the world. So I'm someone who could potentially be convinced to take to the spiritual path, but I also want to be successful in this material world. So how does spirituality and material success, how do they work hand in hand?
A spiritualist is actually equipped and placed to be the most successful in the world. But what they do in their success is they achieve their success with integrity. And what makes them different is when they achieve that success, then they utilize it with generosity. Many people have become successful in the world, but that doesn't mean they've had a successful life. The question is, did you achieve your success with integrity? And once you achieved your success, did you utilize it for the benefit of the world with generosity? Someone can become rich, but we want to earn with integrity, and then we want to use that wealth with generosity and spend it with generosity. And so spiritual people are actually the most ambitious, and the living proof is our very own founder, Bhaktivedanta Swami, who at the age of 70 decided to travel the world with an ambition. He ended up traveling the world 14 times. He ended up opening over 100 temples. He ended up in those 11 years translating over 80 books, initiating over 5,000 disciples, and he made Hare Krishna a household word in practically every country in the world, including Dubai. And sounds pretty ambitious to me, pretty successful.
Okay. So, integrity. You said earn with integrity. My concern is, with a lot of what you said, it sounds so poetic, it sounds so beautiful. It just doesn't sound very practical. I don't see how integrity is going to help me pay my bills. So please tell me, if I have a choice to make of do I go down the path of integrity, or where I can maybe cut some corners, but I can make some money, what should I do, really, if I've got bills to pay?
You see, there's two ways of earning wealth. You can earn wealth and get quick traction very, very quickly through exploitation, through intrigue. Two things will happen. The first thing is that wealth may not sustain because it's built upon very weak foundations. According to ancient spiritual traditions, there is a law of karma, and therefore there's an invisible force which is also determining your futures beyond just your material maneuvering. The second thing is that if you earn money questionably, then it's not just that it has unstable foundations, but actually in your heart, you won't feel the satisfaction, you won't feel the happiness. Because if you exploit others, if your success is built upon the detriment of others, then there'll be something deep inside of you, a conscience, which reminds you that I didn't do the right thing. And each one of us have that voice within us. And so while we're living in this world, yes, we have to be practical, we have to adjust, there are certain things we have to do. But on the whole, we try to embrace principles of truthfulness, principles of compassion, principles of proper conduct. Because in the long run, although it may take you longer, in the long run, it will be a sustainable and satisfying type of happiness.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'm feeling very convinced. And I believe it may be time for the next person. So do we want to open it up to questions specifically on this topic? So if anybody, firstly, can I apologize? I was playing a role.
He's a nice guy. He's my old friend.
I don't want to be getting daggers in the corridor. How did you speak to Maharaj in this way? He is my worshipable guru. So please forgive me for the tone. I was just playing a role. But yeah, are there any specific questions from anyone in the audience on this specific topic of why spirituality in the first place? Does anyone have any doubts, any questions?
Yes. Can give the mic, yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. It was an excellent session and very enlightening. I particularly liked the example you gave of a hospital full of doctors and a hospital full of nurses.
Yes.
That was excellent. I really liked it. My question is, this was speaking about spirituality, and it's a talk that I also use regularly. A lot of conversations that this is religion, this is spirituality. Though we understand what spirituality is, but sometimes I find myself questioning, do I really understand in words what spirituality is? So can you please explain the term spirituality, what exactly it means, what are the things that it takes into account, and just elaborate on this.
This term spirituality, what does it actually mean to be spiritual? Yes, thank you so much. Such a nice question. We live in a world which is full of material things. See this? This is wood. This is matter, earth, water, fire, air, ether. These are called the Pancha Mahabhuta, the 5 gross material elements. And most of the world, what they are doing is they are only concerning themselves with what they can see with these senses. And therefore they try to move the resources of this world. They try to earn, they try to build up their material situation. They're very much concerned with just this life. So spirituality is the process by which we begin to see what is beyond that matter. Who is behind this matter? What was before this matter? And what happens after this matter? Is there anything higher than this matter? So therefore I tell people science teaches you about matter, but spirituality teaches you what matters. Science can teach you how to make things better, but spirituality will teach you how to make people better. Science will answer the questions. Spirituality will question the questions. Science will tell you all about the how and the what, but spirituality will teach you about the why. And so, if people only have this scientific, materialistic view by which they deal with this world, they will only catch a very, very small part of life. But spirituality means to understand the why, the who is beyond this, the what is the purpose of life. And spirituality means to understand in the deepest way what will actually make us happy beyond material things. Is that okay? Can we just wait for the mic? Is possible?
Hare Krishna. So spirituality and religion are 2 different things, or religion is the way
in
to
one
reach to
sense it
spirituality?
depends, because different people define things in different ways. The original meaning of the word religion comes from the Latin ligare. Re means again, and ligare means to connect. So the original meaning of religion is that which connects you again to that supreme person. So if religion is actually practiced for the purpose of what religion was created, then it's the same as spirituality. But nowadays people use religion for all different kinds of things. When they want to get materially ahead, they use religion. When they want to find someone who they want to marry, they use religion. When they want to create war with others, they use religion. So nowadays people use religion for all kinds of purposes. And therefore religion receives a very bad name. And therefore nowadays we distinguish, no, this is spirituality, not religion. But if we look at religion in its original purpose, it should make you a spiritual person. It's the same thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to see so many hands have come up as questions. But what we will do is let's spread this out a little bit. I'm so sorry to intervene at this point, because we've got 2 more segments, and between each segment, we'll definitely come back to you for the questions. And I saw your hand up go up as well. So if you don't mind, we'll just break this up, and then we'll move on. So the first segment, thank you so much, Nandagopal Prabhu, was looking at the Bhagavad Gita and our conversation with Maharaj from less faithful, but more as the Bhagavad Gita as literary scripture. The next segment that we're going to have is going to look at the Bhagavad Gita with a nice intertwine of Bhagavad Gita from the point of view of having faith, but also applying this in our lives, but to deepen that understanding. So the whole idea to have this session is to have different perspectives of the Bhagavad Gita so we can peel those layers as we understand. And so I'd like to invite Haridas Varya Prabhu to move on to the next segment, and then we can go a little bit further.
I've got rid of my danda now, so you can relax.
Exactly. Thank you, Maharaj. So Maharaj, definitely a different angle, as Chiranjeevi Sham was mentioning about. Definitely we are all reading Bhagavad Gita on a day-to-day basis. However, there are some questions that spring into our mind, you know. The first question that I can think of is, why us? There are many people in Dubai. They have good shelter, good food, clothing, all the necessary arrangements, right? And we know life is up and down. We are content. We watch our Netflixes every day. Yeah? Why do we need Bhagavad Gita? I mean, we are not really looking into the eye, into the problems that Arjuna was looking into. So can you throw some light on why would we even need Bhagavad Gita if my life is happy and content?
I don't want to scare you, but I will. Have you ever in your life lived through an earthquake?
No.
No, you haven't, right? Anyone here has been in an earthquake? Okay. So earthquakes are incredibly destructive and also very interesting phenomena. Because an earthquake, you can never predict when it's going to come. Mm-hmm. You can never predict where it's going to occur. And you can never predict on what scale it will occur. But earthquakes happen. Mm-hmm. And similarly, if we look at every single person's life in this world, every single person in this world will go through what we call life quakes. Science, history, sociology and anthropology tells us that in the average person's life, they will go through between 3 and 5 life quakes. You want me to give you an example of life quakes? A relationship breakup. Someone you love in your life may leave the world. A health crisis. An environmental issue. An issue in society. Some kind of financial problem or decline in your fortunes. These kind of things come to every single person in their lifetime. You may not be going through it now, but statistics tell us that nobody is exempt from this. Now my question to you is, if tomorrow you lose a loved one, which subject did you learn in school which teaches you how to deal with that difficulty? Does geography teach you to deal with the loss of a loved one? No. Does maths teach you how to deal with a health problem? No. Does English teach you how to deal with a midlife crisis? No. There's no subject in the world which teaches people how to navigate the inevitable complexities that each one of us will face. And that knowledge is given in the Bhagavad Gita. And therefore the Bhagavad Gita is a life manual that's relevant for every single person in every single time, place, and circumstance.
Right. Very convincing, Maharaj. I would like to just pivot that thought a little further in terms of in the schools and colleges that we learn, we have been mentioned by our teachers that you should have a good job. It gives you wealth and prosperity. For example, the life quakes that you mentioned about in terms of financial ups and downs, maybe a good term insurance will save me through. Maybe a good health insurance can see me ups and downs on the health factor. So wealth and prosperity, if we bank on that, how are we not navigating these life quakes? Again, brings back a little bit of perspective to say, do we really need it? I do read in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says, I don't want the kingdom, but why? Doesn't wealth and prosperity sail us through these life quakes?
Thank you so much. One time Srila Prabhupada, he was driving to an engagement, so they got stuck in a traffic jam. So Srila Prabhupada, he looked out of the window and there was a sign and it said, roadworks, temporary inconvenience, permanent solutions. So Srila Prabhupada, he looked at the sign and he began laughing and he said, the material world means temporary improvements, permanent inconvenience. So wealth and prosperity can give you temporary improvement, but the permanent inconveniences of life will remain. There are some things that you can't solve externally. Those things need to be solved by changing the internal way in which we see those things. There will be situations in life that you have no control over. And in those moments, your wealth, your prosperity, your power, none of that will help. In those moments, the only thing that will help is your spiritual vision, your spiritual consciousness, and your ability to look at a situation and process it and digest it in a completely different way. And therefore, those who are wise, they realize that peace is not in trying to remove all anxiety, but peace is in trying to bring the presence of divinity into every situation.
Makes sense. So in the same vein, we look at Arjuna, because we've been reading about Bhagavad Gita in the first chapter and the second. He's saying, I don't want this wealth and prosperity. Forget about the kingdom. And he wants to take the path of divinity and beg alms and say, I don't want to fight. But here is Krishna turning him around and say, no, you fight for the kingdom. Aren't we somewhere or the other, loosey-goosey, somewhere we are going back to the same steps in saying, gain your wealth and prosperity? Because if I read it in that light, and maybe you can throw some more deeper insights if it is so, it seems as if we are goading Arjuna to regain a kingdom.
So why is Krishna encouraging Arjuna to fight, to win a kingdom, to be prosperous, when I'm sitting here saying none of that can make you happy?
Absolutely.
Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that there's a natural process of life. So you can remember these words: dharma, artha, kama, moksha, and then the Vaishnavas say prema. Now these are 5 steps of life, and what Krishna explains in the Gita is that all of these elements are valid parts of life. The first thing is that life should begin on a foundation of dharma. Every single person should understand the right way to live, the right principles. And if you do that, Krishna says, artha, you can get material things, no problem. And Krishna says, kama, if you get those material things, you will satisfy your desires. But along that journey, someone will realize, but it didn't make me happy. I got everything that everyone would always dream of, yet in my heart, I feel like something's missing. And at that time, moksha, one begins to look what is beyond all of these material things. And then ultimately, prema, one realizes the real wealth is if I develop love in my heart for God, love for all those around me. And so the Bhagavad Gita is such an incredible book because it doesn't tell you the material is useless, the spiritual is real, therefore just leave everything and do the spiritual. The Bhagavad Gita says pursue the material, but pursue it in such a way that eventually you understand there's something much beyond that. And therefore, the Bhagavad Gita helps you to be happy and healthy and prosperous on the physical, on the emotional, and ultimately on the spiritual platform.
Very nice. So on this physical and the emotional bit, since you mentioned about that, Arjuna, sometimes I feel, Maharaj, well, we are very honest, I feel we are over-glorifying Arjuna as a perfect spiritual seeker. If you read some of his responses in the first and the second chapter, he says, my mouth is drying up. That means he's having some miserly weakness. He says, I am in complete grief, which I would, in the modern parlance, put it as a depression, if I have to put it in that way. So he is having a mental block to fight, or he's scared, or a coward, or an infamy that is worrying him. Are we really glorifying and trying to wriggle out really the meanings which is suitable to our narrative? Is that really happening in the Bhagavad Gita?
Arjun is representing each one of us. Throughout our life, there will be times when we question. Throughout our life, there will be times of confusion. At certain points in our life, we will also question and we may feel a sense of hopelessness and helplessness. And so Arjun represents each one of us. You see, where you are doesn't determine who you are. I'll say that again. Where you are in your life doesn't determine who you are. Everyone in their life will go through low points. Everyone in their life will go through times when they feel hopeless. But sometimes that material breakdown can lead to a spiritual breakthrough. And so Arjun represents each one of us, and sometimes that's what life will do to us. Life will send you an obstacle. Life will send you a problem. Life will send you something so shocking and unexpected. And in that moment, if we do what Arjun did, which is to inquire, why? Then those challenges can lead to the greatest growth.
So do we need to lose our way to find our way? Do we really need to hit a
We
dead end?
we don't need to.
Lose our way to find our way.
We don't need to, but many people will have to go through that journey.
So you mean to say it's inevitable from the life quakes that you mentioned about? We will stare across certain scenarios in life where we will face that difficulty, and at those times we need to select the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita, which will help us through. Is that?
Some people learn through hearing. Some people, they hear, but they need to also observe it for themselves.
Yes.
And some people, they hear it, they observe it in others, but they need to experience it to learn it. And some people hear it, observe it, experience it, and still don't get it.
Maybe I'm the fourth.
So most people have to experience.
Okay.
And therefore...
And in this experience, we commonly talk about mind control. It's one of the most spoken topic in the Bhagavad Gita, how do you control your mind? And we hear so many instructions of how to do our mind control. There was a question once in a university, a student asked me this question, and it was quite bamboozling. I couldn't answer that, and I would like to put that question in front of you. He said that in the garb of mind control, and if I am supposed to listen to you or what the Bhagavad Gita is preaching, am I not being controlled by your narrative?
We are brainwashing you.
So it's like a kind of mind control, but I'm allowing my mind to be controlled by your narrative. So is it really that's what is happening?
See, every day you are influencing, you are subjecting yourself to so many influences. Do you watch TV? Don't lie, you told me you watch Netflix.
I admitted it.
What is the TV? The one-eyed guru. So, do you use social media?
Yes, I do.
So there you go. You're subjecting yourself to so many influences every day. So everyone, without exception, will be influenced by others. You're influenced by the media, you're influenced by tradition, you're influenced by your family, you're influenced by what you see every day. So what we are saying is that yes, by reading the Bhagavad Gita, you are also being influenced. Of course you are. But it's an influence which is uplifting, an influence which is progressive, and an influence which actually gets you to think. If you look at every other influence in your life, it is actually narrowing your thinking and critical power. But in the Bhagavad Gita, what Krishna is telling Arjuna is expand your critical thinking. And therefore it's an influence which makes you think more critically instead of just accepting everything that the world has told you is the goal of life.
Makes sense. In terms of uplifting us, these influences help us to navigate our life quakes better.
Right.
I think I'm liking the name of, or the term of life quakes as you mentioned it. Two questions, I think, in the interest of time. One of the questions is, along with this mind control, Bhagavad Gita also talks about detachment, how you should be detached, and you spoke about the spectrum where we are material, we pursue material, but slowly we try to dovetail into the spiritual. Doesn't that make our heart hard? Like, for example, if my boss is coming and offering me a promotion tomorrow, and I say, I learned Svayam Bhagavan Keshava Maharaja saying, be detached. I don't need the promotion. That wouldn't be very wise in the corporate circuit or in the place of work where we are working. So does that really mean I detach completely my aspirations, my ambitions on the material scale to be spiritual?
To be detached doesn't mean you lose all your emotions. To be detached means you stop trying to control things. To be detached means you stop trying to control people. To be detached means to understand I'm not the controller, but there's someone who's much more intelligent, who's controlling everything. I can still be kind. I can still try. I can still give my heart to something. I can still give the best of myself. But the detached person knows after I've done all of that, then it depends on the divinity. And that detachment comes after one has given the best of themselves. The detachment doesn't stop you from giving the best of yourself, but rather the detachment comes after you've given the best of yourself to then step away and say, now it's beyond my control. And therefore I'm happy with whatever comes from here.
Okay, that's very nice. We hear about that, but it doesn't sink in. Last question that I wanted to ask, and this is on the very surface level. Arjuna is fighting for a kingdom. Krishna is talking about achieving those back. If I compare it to my real life, I don't live in a kingdom or a monarchical setting. Of course, I do here, but but traditionally, I mean, I'm not in a monarchical setting. I'm in a more democratic setting. I don't have a kingdom to earn. Is it really an archaic philosophy, or are we trying to revolutionize it as the ages go by to make it more practical? Because I often hear nothing has changed, the verses are the same, but it's applicable for every era. But is it a far cry from that? Are we really stretching that thought?
You may not live in a palace as a king with a royal set of duties, but basically your life is the same. You have a family, right?
Yes.
You have some stress, right?
Yes, definitely. With the family, yes.
Good. I'm happy to know that. You have hard decisions to make in your life sometimes?
Yes, one to sit here right now.
Okay, yeah. You have some ethical crises sometimes to know what is the right thing to do in this situation?
Many times, Maharaj.
Right. So whether you are Arjun 5,000 years ago in Kurukshetra or whether you're living in Dubai, the human condition doesn't change. The human questions don't change. For centuries, people have been asking the same question. Why do bad things happen to good people?
Yes.
Which means, why do bad things happen to me? Because I'm a good person, huh? We ask the same questions. So therefore, the Bhagavad Gita is very, very beautiful because it asks the questions that are deep within your heart before you've even asked them. And therefore, when you read this book, it almost sometimes feels as though it's reading your mind. And therefore, this book is what we call timeless. In a very beautiful verse, Arjun says, Deshakalartha yuktani ritapo pashamani cha haranti smarataschitam govinda bihitani me. After Arjun finishes the whole battle of Kurukshetra, he says, now I am remembering the Bhagavad Gita, Desha Kalartha Yuktani, because the words that Krishna spoke, Desha, they're relevant in all countries. Kala, they're relevant in all times. Yuktani, and they're relevant in all circumstances.
Wow.
So yes, Bhagavad Gita is a timeless literature.
Thank you, Maharaj, for your time.
Wonderful.
In fact, I'd like to pivot to the audience.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Can we have another round of applause for Haridas Arya Prabhu, please? Okay.
Thank you.
So at this point, at this juncture, we're just going to mix it up a little bit. What we've done, just as the session was going on, Maharaj, we actually had the time to get a few questions in from the audience.
Okay.
And just to make this a little bit more interesting, can we do it rapid fire?
Sure.
Okay. So Maharaj, how are you feeling in the hot seat?
I'm okay. So far, so good.
Okay, wonderful. I mean, I feel hot in the hot seat. I don't know how you guys sat here. Okay. Maharaj, first question. How many times have you read the Bhagavad Gita?
Oh, maybe 15.
15 times. I mean, for a lot of us, if we've read 15 chapters, that's a big deal. But 15 times is a lot of times. Next question. Each time you read the Bhagavad Gita, did you have a different realization?
I wouldn't say a different realization, but I had a deepening realization. I feel spiritual learning is like a spiral. You read the same thing again and again and again and again and again, and you go deeper and deeper.
So your point is that when you read something again and again, the book remains the same, but sometimes the effect it has on you differs, correct?
Yeah, in the beginning you're reading to get through the book, and later on, after many readings, the book gets through to you.
Wow. No, my next question that we got from the audience is, if the Bhagavad Gita is time immemorial, then why in the Bhagavad Gita is it mentioned that at some point it got lost? So that means the Bhagavad Gita, every time that it's passed down, has a different conception from hand to hand. Is that the right way to look at it?
It can get deviated, and that did happen over time. And therefore, that could happen again. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita that we present to the world, the Bhagavad Gita as it is, we try to be as transparent as possible to show that this knowledge is directly coming in the line, directly being taught according to the original, authentic spiritual science. And so Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita is called Bhagavad Gita as it is, because definitely there is the chance that anyone could begin to insert their own opinions and ideas and interpretations.
So if the Bhagavad Gita is truly as it is, then in addition to the verses and the translations, why do we have purports in the Bhagavad Gita? Because the purports imply that it needs further explanation. So does the Bhagavad Gita need further explanation?
It needs explanation because times change, because circumstances change, and therefore the application of how that knowledge is then practiced in our daily life, we need help for that. Therefore, in any subject in the world, you never just learn it from books, you learn it from teachers. And so our teachers give explanations, but they're not interpretations, they're not opinions. They're simply teaching Krishna's original philosophy, but in a way that's applicable and practical.
Wonderful. The next question we have is, if Bhagavad Gita is the one book with the answer for everything, why do we have so many different books and so many different religions today?
You see, different people in the world are looking for different things. Not everyone is looking to understand the absolute spiritual truth. Some people have other desires that they want to pursue on the journey there. And therefore, what God does is He comes down at different times, places, and circumstances to give the same knowledge, but to different people in different situations who are searching for different things. And what God does is He takes everyone from a certain position and He offers them all an opportunity to progress. And therefore, although Bhagavad Gita we would say is the culmination of that philosophy, it doesn't mean that other books are not useful and other books are not also relevant and authorized. They are, and they can help. But the philosophy contained within the Gita is considered the culmination of all spiritual wisdom.
So this actually moves very perfectly into the next question I have. So does that mean that the Bhagavad Gita is only for the Hindus?
The Bhagavad Gita is a spiritual science. The interesting fact about the word Hindu is that you don't actually find the word Hindu anywhere in the Bhagavad Gita. For that matter, you don't actually find the word Hindu anywhere in the Vedas. Hindu is a cultural term that was coined later on to refer to people who were practicing the Vedic teachings in the mainland of India. So therefore, Bhagavad Gita is not a Hindu book. Bhagavad Gita is what we call Sanatan Dharma, and that means the eternal function of every single living entity. And therefore, more than a religion, more than a sectarian culture, more than a regional kind of belief system, the Bhagavad Gita is a spiritual science, and it's available and accessible and applicable for anyone who wants to actually achieve those levels of spiritual consciousness and awareness.
Wonderful. And just to caveat into our next segment, Maharaj. So you said the Bhagavad Gita should be available. This is another question that we got from the audience. Bhagavad Gita can always be looked at from a very theoretical perspective. That means the ideal standard for human being, here is the book that we have. but how can it actually be made practical to follow? Because, for example, Krishna talks in the Bhagavad Gita about all the qualities of a good person, good character, good relationships. But is doing good enough, or is there something more?
Some people say, I don't need to be a spiritual person, I just need to be a good person. But to be a good person means you have to do good for other people. And to do good for other people, you have to know who other people are and what they need. And so if you don't know who people are, if you don't know what is their deepest need, if you don't know why they're even here in this world in the first place, how in the world can you do good for them? So to be a good person means not just to have the passion to serve, but to be a good person means to have the compass of knowledge. Because when you add the compass to the passion, then it becomes compassion. And so to be a good person doesn't just mean to have the good intent. It means to have the necessary knowledge to know how to actually benefit people.
Superb. Can we get another round of applause for this mini rapid fire session? Thank you so much, Maharaj, for answering those questions. And please do keep texting me as we go on. We'll have another round of Q&A after this last segment. And so, Maharaj, thank you for the beautiful definition of compass. Saying that, I continue like a compass to look around the room for Shubhashini Mataji. Please, welcome to the stage. And so the next segment, we want to talk about the practicalities of the Bhagavad Gita. Like I just asked Maharaj and he answered so eloquently. We need a compass, but without the passion, we won't be able to build about the compassion and understanding that we have of the people around us. So now understanding Bhagavad Gita from a practical perspective, and for us as practicing devotees, how does the Bhagavad Gita actually make sense to us? Here presenting is Shubhashini Mataji with a few questions. Thank you so much.
Hi Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Chiran. So Maharaj, just to set the context, I've been attending a Bhakti Vriksha for over a year now, and I've been listening to Gita. So they've finished one round of the 18 chapters, and I understand some bits of the Gita, and here I am given an opportunity to ask some questions based on the Gita's principles, and that's where I'm coming from.
Sure.
So basically, there's this humility, point of humility, which comes quite a bit in the Gita, and I work, right? So when I go into my workspace, it feels like I have to be a strong woman, I need to have self-esteem, and then I come into the class, they say, you know, you have to be very humble, you have to be forgiving. So it feels like these are two different silos to live in, and it feels very, sometimes I'm living like two people in one body.
Two lives.
Two lives, you know, I have to be humble here and I have to be with a lot of self-respect and very strong in other place. How do I manage these two people within one person?
Thank you so much. Yes, so in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about so many qualities. Be humble, be tolerant. And in the world today, we think to ourselves, if I'm humble, if I'm tolerant, then I am finished. Because people will just take advantage of me. So therefore, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he's explaining that these qualities are very internal qualities. To be humble doesn't mean that in the world you just accept everything that everyone does and just be humble. But to be humble means sometimes in the world you will speak out. Sometimes in the world you do have to fight against injustice. You can be humble and do that at the same time, but to be humble means one does it not out of any pride, not out of any ego, not out of any sense of trying to dominate over others, but one does it very much in a spirit of service. Arjuna was fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjuna was annihilating armies, but he was humble. Because humility is not something external. Humility is something very, very internal. In the same way, tolerance is something very, very internal. If tomorrow someone commits some injustice, then I may speak out against it. But tolerance means that in my heart, I don't become overwhelmed by emotion. Srila Prabhupada said, the anger of a pure devotee is like a deep ocean. On the waves, on the surface, there may be waves, but inside there is deep calmness. So when we understand these qualities, we realize I can be humble and tolerant in all times, places and circumstances, but how I display that may vary according to the situation.
Wow, thank you so much. Thanks. That's a very profound answer. Thank you, Maharaj. It's connected to this. When you say externally it has to be expressed appropriately, but within there has to be control.
Yeah.
How do we actually practically imbibe it as a person? What are the practical steps to actually reach there?
Yeah. That's why what we recommend to everyone before we begin to interact with the world every single day is that we take some time to meditate. We take some time to do sadhana. We take some time to remind ourselves that I'm not part of this world. I'm just here for some time. And what happens is in the morning times when we do this focused spiritual meditation, then what happens is when we then come out into the world, we begin to interact with the world with a different type of consciousness. And so these qualities have to be absorbed within our heart. And they become absorbed in our heart through focused spiritual practice.
Thank you. Thank you, Maharaj. So Maharaj, you just answered Haridas Varya Prabhu's question on detachment. So I'm coming from a position of a mother and a wife. Many times I want to detach myself, but it seems like a bit of again, a dilemma how there's a lot of emotions flowing. I feel like as a woman, I'm like a ball of emotions, you know. I'm worried if my son doesn't eat, my daughter doesn't sleep. So how do we live detached in an attached environment and in a body which has so many emotions? It feels like I love them so much, but I have to be detached. How do we do that?
Proper detachment allows us to balance our emotions. One extreme is we become emotionless. And the other extreme is we become overwhelmed by emotions to the extent that they don't actually help us in doing what we're meant to be doing. There's a point as a mother when you have to let go. Because if you keep doing it more and more and more, then you can turn your kids in the other direction. I have personal experience. Although I love my mom, of course. There comes a point when even your children will tell you, Mom, give it a rest. Give me a break. So there's a point at which even as a mother, you need to understand that you can't continue to just overwhelm others with your emotions because you actually become counterproductive. And so the great art of the Bhagavad Gita is how to not become emotionless and how to not also go to the other extreme of becoming overwhelmed, but how to channel your emotions, use your emotions so that you can touch people's hearts, so that you can achieve what you're meant to achieve in this world, and so that you can do your duty in the most beautiful way.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The next question, which is about the Gita. So I hear this devotee who was dealing with these classes talk about how it is wonderful to be connected to the parampara. You're reading the Gita, how the Gita is also, handed down through the parampara disciplic succession. So is it necessary that I have to read Bhagavad Gita in a way to be part of ISKCON and only then I will connect with God? Or can I just read Gita as just Bhagavad Gita and still God will accept me and I can go back home?
Thank you. So we want to let everyone know that at the end of life, when you reach the spiritual world, everyone will ask you for your ISKCON life membership card. So make sure you get it today. Krishna wants to experience your love. Krishna wants to see the eagerness, the enthusiasm, the inspiration within your heart to engage in loving pastimes with Him. Whether you do that in ISKCON or outside of ISKCON, to be honest, is inconsequential in one sense. The real purpose of anyone in their life is to awaken love for Krishna. And wherever one can develop love for God, one should go to that place. However, ISKCON is very special because Srila Prabhupada, who founded ISKCON, brought a teaching to this world, a purity of religion, a purity of spirituality that has not been witnessed in many places. Srila Prabhupada taught us that you don't need to be scared of God. You don't need to just be worried that if I don't follow this, and... Srila Prabhupada taught us to love God, to have a natural relationship with God. And Srila Prabhupada created a whole community where we can all come together and inspire each other in that. And therefore, it's not necessary to be part of ISKCON. But in another sense, why would you not be part of ISKCON? Because here you can find amazing support, amazing friendship, amazing wisdom, and you know what? You also get amazing prasadam.
I totally agree because the classes are always, they end with amazing prasad. Yeah. I think I'm connected with these classes because of the amazing prasad that comes through. In another, connected to something similar, when you ask this question, why wouldn't you be connected with ISKCON when we have all of these? I think the mind is also very focused towards negativity, and it finds negativity very quickly. So I have attended a few of the programs that they have invited me to, and I do notice many things which are like there is a lot of chaos and there is anger, and I hear from the Gita throughout this year that devotee has to control anger and one has to see the dualities. One shouldn't be affected by dualities. And then I come here and then I see
people arguing.
People who have read this and who've been following this for so long still go through these emotions. I'm wondering, why am I here? What am I going to gain? So how do I deal with this?
Thank you so much. Yeah, so sometimes you may come to an ISKCON program, a community gathering, and you look around and you realize these people also have weaknesses. These people aren't as pure as I thought. You see, ISKCON is like a hospital. And we all come to ISKCON to get better. And we're all at different stages of our recovery.
Okay.
And some of us, even after recovering, we relapse. And therefore, there may be, just maybe, sometimes, on a rare occasion, you may just see someone relapse into old bad habits. But we should understand still they are very special, still they are advancing on that path, and still they are worthy of great respect, because anyone, Krishna says, who begins this journey of spirituality is very rare. In a beautiful verse, Krishna says, Manushyanam sahasreshu kashkit yatati siddhaye Yatatam api siddhanam kashkin maam veti tatvata. Krishna says, out of many thousands, maybe one will try to walk this spiritual path, and out of those who are walking it, maybe one will achieve perfection. So every single person here in this room is very rare. And if they get angry now and again, we'll overlook it.
Thank you. Thank you, Maharaj. So I did, since we just completed the 18th chapter, there was this shloka which really bowled me over, which is Sarvadharman Parityajya. So surrendering to Krishna. So I was listening to this class, and this is the question that I had. What does it mean to surrender to Krishna while I'm still making decisions and acting in this world? What does it mean?
What does it mean to surrender to Krishna? Well, the first question we would have to ask ourselves is, what can I surrender to Krishna? What is actually in my possession? What is actually mine? And when we begin to analyze, we realize, what is mine? Is this body mine? Not really, because it can be taken away at any moment. Are my possessions mine? Well, not really, because they can be taken away. Are my abilities mine? Not really, because even those can be taken away. So what is actually yours? There's only one thing that Krishna gives us, which he never takes away. And what is that? Our own free will. And therefore, surrender means the only one thing you can give to Krishna is your own free will. Your own power to say, Krishna, let thy will be done. I will follow whatever your guidance is. I will walk with you. I will align myself with your plan. But then next question someone will say is, how do I know what Krishna's plan is? How do I know how he wants me to use my will? Therefore, we follow Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. We follow spiritual teachers, we take the company of the saintly, and we follow Krishna's words as given in the revealed scriptures. And by doing that, we begin to understand how to use our will in such a way that it's aligned with Krishna's will. And when we align our will with Krishna's will, then we are walking with God at every moment. And then we are living in surrender. And that life will lead us to Vrindavan, Krishna's
Beautiful
playground.
Insight. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful insight. So that interestingly brings another question to me. So I've heard not even a blade of grass moves without the sanction of the Lord. So it seems like I'm confused between my free will. It seems like God has given me the free will, but he's also controlling it. So where is my free will if God is sanctioning every bit of it and he is in control of everything? So how do I understand this? What is my free will then?
Free will means you have the power to choose. God's will means he decides how it turns out.
Okay.
So, life is an interplay of fate and free will. We use our free will, and Krishna is the Upadrashta, Anumanta Cha, he says in Bhagavad Gita. He's the overseer and the permitter. So therefore, observing our free will, Krishna will then reciprocate with our free will and create a certain situation in our life. But whatever situation Krishna creates is always for the best, because Krishna is the best friend of every living entity. And so what happens in life is that we have the opportunity to make decisions, and according to our decisions, we will create a certain life for ourselves by Krishna's reciprocation. And then in that life, we have the opportunity to utilize our free will again. And then how we utilize it will create our next situation. So what we're basically doing in the world is we're constantly redesigning our destiny by utilizing our free will.
Interesting. Thank you. I have last two questions, if I have the time. One of those days, I had an event in my house, and the devotees had come. And I worship Lord Shiva. So I had a picture of Lord Shiva, but it seemed like some of the devotees were telling me that I should technically remove that picture and I should have a picture of Krishna, because that's the ultimate goal of life and I'm supposed to worship Krishna and Krishna only. But I feel a little offended that they were insensitive to my way of worship to someone. When I'm respecting their worship to Krishna and I attend the Gita classes, I felt a little offended. So how do I understand and connect these two paths?
Sure. Within Vedic teachings, within the Vedic family, we have different dimensions of beings. We have Bhagavan, the Supreme Person. We have avatar, incarnations. We have Devata, we have demigods. Okay. We have Jiva, living entities. We have Prakriti, material world.
Wow.
And what Krishna explains in the Gita is that all of these levels of beings and matter are to be honored.
Okay.
What to speak of living beings, we even honor the earth. When we were young, we were taught in the morning the first thing you should do is bow down to Mother Bhumi and pay respects, because all day you will be taking help from her only.
Okay.
And therefore we honor and we worship everyone, even Mother Earth. What to speak of the gods, what to speak of the avatars, what to speak of Bhagavan.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is that there's no question of disrespect within our tradition. We respect everyone. But true respect means to respect that person for who they are in the position that they are.
Okay.
And therefore, there's a very, very beautiful verse in the Bhagavatam. Nimnaganam yatha ganga devanam achyuto yatha vaishnavanam yatha shambhu purananam idam tatha. Nimnaganam yatha Ganga. Of all bodies of water, Ganga is considered foremost. Devanam achyuto yatha. Of all gods, Achyuta or Krishna is to be considered foremost. Vaishnavanam yatha Shambhu. Of all devotees of Krishna, Shambhu or Shiva or Shankar is considered the foremost. Purananam idam tatha, and all of this is established within the foremost of scriptures, Srimad Bhagavatam. And so Lord Shiva is honorable, Lord Shiva is worshipable, Lord Shiva is given the greatest reverence, because even Lord Shiva on his Rudraksha beads is chanting the names of Shankarshan. So in our tradition there's no question of disrespect. When Krishna and his family, Nanda Maharaj, they came to Ambikavan on their travels. Then it's explained on one night it was Shivaratri, and they all celebrated Shivaratri there. Mm-hmm. So there's no question of disrespect, but real respect means to respect in the right way.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. That was okay. So I understand that to worship Lord Shiva as the perfect example of a devotee of Lord Krishna. Exactly. Is my understanding right? Thank you. My last question. So there was one of these verses which talked about the spiritual master. And so in that discussion I did hear that we need to move in the process of devotional life. It is important to accept a spiritual master. So my question is it necessary that, so they did talk about two kinds of spiritual masters, there were two more, but they specifically said one is someone that I'm learning from. There's another spiritual master who I get an initiation from. Is it all right if I'm not initiated but I follow the instructions of a spiritual master strictly, and I'm in the process and I'm following the instructions, but I'm not really getting initiated? How do I understand this, this process of initiation?
Thank you so much. Yes, so there is a Shiksha Guru who's instructing you, and then there's a Diksha Guru who you take a formal initiation from. So someone may say, if I'm getting inspiration, if I'm getting instruction, is that okay? Wonderful. Of course it is. And keep doing that. There is no rush, there is no coercion, there is no force for one to accept a formal initiation, a Diksha. This is not something which can be forced. This is something which comes from the heart. However, the formality is not inconsequential. Just like many of you in the room, you decided to make a formal vow to get married. Why don't you just live together? Why did you decide to make a formal vow and get married and go through that formal process? Because there's a sense in which when we go through that formality, there's a deepening of commitment. And where there's a deepening of commitment, there's a greater exchange of love. There's a greater giving of oneself in that relationship. And therefore, it's not the ritual of taking the initiation that's really what matters, but it's what goes with it, which is the giving of oneself in that relationship so that a deeper exchange of love can transpire. And therefore, at a certain point in one's journey, when that natural inspiration arises, then they can take a formal initiation. And before that, they can rest assured that they are making so much advancement by getting the association of what we call Shiksha Gurus or instructors.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. If I may ask something in connection to this particular question, Maharaj, is there a certain time then once I decide that it makes a lot of sense that a formal commitment also encourages one or inspires one to actually move up the ladder? But is there a particular time, or how do I make this decision? Because I know a couple of them who started this class with me are already initiated. And I feel a little bit of pressure that I'm part of this group. If I'm not initiated, I'm not going to be part of this group anymore. You know, I'm going to be out. So that puts me under a lot of pressure. But at the same time, I feel I want to be inspired from within.
Right.
And I want to look up to that person as my spiritual master. I don't want to get initiated because someone else has done it. How do I manage this pressure within me? And what is the timeline or the process of this particular process of initiation?
Yes, everyone is moving according to their own timeline. By when should you get married? Everyone has an opinion, especially your mom and dad. But everyone may do it at a different time in their life because it has to be genuine, isn't it? Otherwise, if you do it prematurely, then again it can lead to other problems. You see, Krishna loves you. The moment you join Srila Prabhupada's family, initiated or not, you are already part of the family. So you don't need to worry. Formal initiation or not, you are as much a devotee as anyone else. But yes, at one point, if one prays deeply, if one desires deeply in their heart, then Krishna will reveal who is that person through whom I can hear Krishna's voice more strongly. The spiritual master and the relationship with your spiritual master is one of the most beautiful relationships in creation, because it's in this relationship that one hears the voice of God. So what can be more magical? What can be more mystical? What can be more moving than that relationship? But that relationship must come naturally, according to inspiration.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so
Wonderful
much for your
answers.
questions.
Hare Krishna.
Wow. Thank you so much, Keshava Maharaj, and thank you, Shubhashini Mataji. So before we open up to the audience for Q&A, my suggestion is I have a few more questions as rapid fire questions on my phone. I'd suggest if you can draft or write down the questions on your mobile phones, or we'll also pass the mics around so you can ask your question and so you can hear from Maharaj directly. I have a list of questions here which were texted to me, maybe easier to comprehend while messaging and easier to summarize a question. So I'll go through some of these and then we'll open it up to the floor. Is that okay, Maharaj? Sure. Okay. So I've just ordered this question to the best way possible. First question. For the Gita, I should have a belief that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How do I believe that Krishna is the Supreme if from childhood I've been taught that somebody else is the Supreme?
Srila Prabhupada says at least theoretically you should accept that Krishna is God. Theoretically means you accept that this is coming from a very high authority. This is coming from an absolute authority. It doesn't mean you need to forget all your ideas. It doesn't mean you need to forget about everything. But it means for this moment, at least try and engage in the experiment. So what we tell people is that the Bhagavad Gita is a spiritual science. So we're not simply asking you to believe, but in the beginning we're saying put a little bit of faith, try it with a high quality of faith, and then see what happens. And then go from there. Like that.
Very nice. Thank you, Maharaj. Next question. If the Bhagavad Gita is truly universal, why is it in Sanskrit?
Because Krishna knew in the future generations people would come and translate it. Krishna may speak in Sanskrit. Sanskrit is a very beautiful language. Sanskrit is known as Devanagari. Devanagari means the language of the gods. So some concepts can only be described in the most amazing of languages, which is Sanskrit. And therefore, Sanskrit remains the language in which it's revealed. But anyone who accesses the knowledge in any of the languages of the world can derive the same benefit.
Very nice. Thank you so much. The next question, now talking about Krishna and the devotees. The Gita is not practical, but Krishna asks me to surrender everything. How can I do that in this day and age? How can I surrender everything?
Therefore, Krishna says it can be a gradual process. You don't have to surrender everything overnight. One thing is for sure, at one point everyone will have to surrender everything whether you like it or not. So surrender comes whether you like it or not. But the question is, will you willingly, lovingly, voluntarily surrender? If you do that, then you become the greatest beneficiary. However, you can do it step by step. And therefore in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, do this. But if you can't do that, do this, then do this, then do this. So he gives options. There's a ladder.
Wonderful. The next question, quite well connected. The question, it's a little bit longer, so I'll just read it through. Just bear with me. And I've summarized this. I don't believe that God or Krishna necessarily wants you to love him and pray to him. When one realizes one has compassion for all humanity, life, God. So my question is the purpose to life to seek love for Krishna or some other God by demonstrating love for him? Or is it to pursue the realization of who we are? Because as a seeker of self-realization and wisdom, coupled with meditation, I feel I would be well situated as I am.
So is it that we can just pursue our life in self-realization? Why do we need God realization? I just look for self-realization. Self-realization and God realization go hand in hand. If you want to see yourself, then you have to wait for the sun to rise. And when the sun rises and you see the sun, then immediately you see yourself. So how can you see yourself if first you don't understand who God is? Because the self is ultimately a part and parcel of Krishna. Krishnera Svarupa hoy, Krishnera Nityada, Jivara Svarupa hoy, Krishnera Nityadas, Krishnera Tatastha Shakti Bheda Bheda Prakash. And therefore, a self-realization means to understand where do I come from? Who am I? Who am I eternally connected to? And therefore, self-realization and God realization go hand in hand.
Just 3 more questions and then we'll open it up to the audience.
Hopefully I get out of here alive.
This is interesting. In ISKCON, we have 3 absolutely imperative scriptures, 12 most important books, 25 important books, 60 to 70 great books, hundreds of do not miss books, 10,000s of don't forget to read books. Why should the Gita be studied every day?
Srila Prabhupada says, in the Gita you will find what is in every other book. But you will also find things in the Gita which are not to be found elsewhere. And therefore in a very beautiful verse is explained, Sarvapa nishado gavo dogda go palanandana vatsapartha sudir bhokta dugdam gitam ritam mahat. That if you compare all the Upanishads, all the Shastra to a cow, then Krishna is the dogda, he's milking the cow. Arjuna is the vatsa, he's drinking the milk from the cow. And what is that milk which is coming from the cow of all the scriptures? Dugdam, Gitam, Ritam, Mahat. That dugdam, that milk is the Gita. So the Gita is the essence of everything. So yes, you can't read tens and thousands of books. Well, you can if you want to. But if you can't, if you don't have the time, then make sure you at least read the Bhagavad Gita.
Wonderful. So now about reading the Bhagavad Gita, the next question, which is also very interesting and very relevant to those assembled in the room today. As a parent who is fresh in their Krishna conscious journey, how can we teach our children from a young age about the Gita if we don't fully understand the teachings of it ourselves?
Yes, therefore, you see at our temple in London, what often happens is the parents drop off their children in the morning and they tell their children, now you have to learn the Bhagavad Gita, and they drop off the children. And then it's interesting, after dropping off to the children, they go to the shopping center, the cinema, the golf course, to visit all of their friends, and then they come back in the evening to pick their children up and ask them, did you learn the Bhagavad Gita? And then I tell them, we can teach them as much as we can teach them, but what they're learning from more is your own example. What they're learning from more is what they're seeing you do every single day. And therefore, you can't teach people something that you're not living yourself. And therefore, to be a parent means to be a guru. Like it or not, the moment you become a parent, you are a guru. And a guru must give knowledge. And that means a guru must have knowledge. And therefore, every parent should understand the Bhagavad Gita and then share it, not just through their words, but through their own example.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And the last few questions. Some of these questions are beautiful. I mean, it's opened up the points. Can we appreciate the questions that are coming through, please? Wonderful. How can you explain detachment from the outcome of my actions? What if my detachment of the expectation of the outcome of my actions results in collateral damage to the people around me? And it's damage they face for no fault of theirs, but it's a realization of my journey. I think to summarize it, it's how can you explain detachment from the outcome of my actions when my actions actually have an influence on the people around me and a negative influence in many situations?
Detachment from your actions doesn't mean you don't take responsibility for your actions. Detachment from your actions means I try to do the best I can. I try to do it the best intention. And then whatever happens after that is beyond my control. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be responsible. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be sensitive. That doesn't mean we shouldn't consider what effect will this have on others. All of that is part of our responsibility.
Very nice, thank you. And the last question, again a very poignant question. What is the Bhagavad Gita's take on vegetarianism?
Go for it. In a very beautiful verse, Krishna says, Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhakti uparitam ashnami prayatatmana. Krishna says, if you offer me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, water, then I will accept it. Krishna basically explains that if we live in this world creating the least amount of violence as possible, you see, it's inevitable that we have to consume something living in order to survive. Because the Vedic aphorism tells us, Jivo, Jivasya, Jivanam. One living being is food for another. That's the law of nature. But what we try to do is create the least amount of violence as possible. And therefore, looking at the human physiology, we're designed to eat vegetables, fruits, roots. Looking at social factors, if we would actually eat a vegetarian diet, so many problems would be solved. Looking ethically, why would you want to create so much violence in mass slaughterhouses to animals? And spiritually, why do we want to put a soul through pain when it's unnecessary? And therefore, on all levels, it makes sense to be a vegetarian and also to then offer your food to Krishna.
Wonderful. Can we please get a huge round of applause for Maharaj? Okay. So we're just going to pass the mic around. And I've already seen a few hands passing, and so I'll come to you, and I'll come to you as well, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. My wife feels that we should not be inclined to God at this age. You should be do all this in old age only. Right now, fulfill your responsibilities, earn money, and then seek the spiritual path. So she says it's not the right
Do
age.
it when you're old. So it's like this. You don't get into your car, turn on the engine, start driving, get onto the motorway, and then ask yourself, by the way, where am I going? Before you get into the car, you should already know where you're going. Imagine you go on a train and you're sitting across from someone in the train, and just to be nice, you tell them, where did you come from? And they say, I don't know. So immediately, then you ask them, so where are you going? I don't know. So why are you here in this train? I don't know. Immediately you'll think, call the police. So therefore, before we decide what to do in life and how to do it, we should understand why we are doing it. Right? So therefore, Krishna tells Arjuna, this knowledge should be given in the beginning of life. And remember, getting this knowledge in the beginning of life doesn't mean you can't be successful. I already told you, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, prema. So therefore, by getting this knowledge in the beginning, then you can be successful on all levels, materially and spiritually. And if someone says, I'll do it when I'm old, my question to them is, what is old? Old means close to death. So can you guarantee that a 43-year-old will not die before an 83-year-old? So everyone's old. Because we have no idea. Therefore, this knowledge should be given immediately. Because it's not the thing you do at the end of life, but it's the thing which orientates your whole life.
Hare Krishna Maharaj and Hare Krishna devotees, Dandavat Pranams. Maharaj, the question is that you mentioned about why do bad things happen to good people and also some ways of earning. So there are cases where, let's say two people and one guy harasses and exploits and then he does a lot of cheating and then earns and he becomes very, very successful. Another person does an honest job, he does his earning, but he doesn't get that much success. But then when you see that the successful person is going to success and he progresses, and the concept that probably in the next life he will suffer, he'll become bad, and this person cannot see that what's happening. So it doesn't make sense. So how do we deal with it?
It's interesting. Sometimes more disturbing than the question, why do bad things happen to good people, is why do good things happen to those guys? That's what affects us more, actually. We're more like disturbed by that one. Very interesting. You see, whether we can see the full life cycle of someone's karma or not, that is not the measure. The measure is for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And therefore, at one point, someone's actions will fructify. It's just a matter of time. You see, you know, if someone is constantly eating unhealthy and doing things that will damage their health, you don't need to hang around to say like, why are they not experiencing disease now? In your mind, you know, it's just about to happen. You don't need to see it to convince yourself. You know, if you do this, it's about to happen. So similarly, one who knows the law of karma knows that if people are doing questionable things, they might be riding the wave of success right now, but it's all going to come crashing down. You can't escape the law of karma. Once there was a man, he went past the shop, and the shop said, buy anything you want, and your grandson will pay the bill. So he went into the shop. He said, this is jalsa, you know. He was having a good time. He filled up the whole trolley. He bought everything. He came to the checkout counter. It was like thousands of dollars. He said, no, yeah, don't worry. My grandson will pay. So he was walking out and they said, hey, stop. So he said, what's the problem? They slapped the bill. He said, what's the problem? You said my grandson is going to pay the bill. They said, yes, this is the bill of your grandfather. So nobody can escape karma. You may think you do some maneuvering like this or this. I'm doing it. Krishna didn't see. I did it in secret. No. Ishvara sarva bhutanam. Riddhya arjuna tistari. Krishna is in your heart. He is the eternal CCTV. So it's coming. So we should be wise. No? Makes sense? Okay. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaja. No.
Oh, yes.
Working. The question goes back to when I was a kid, and now it's surfacing up again. So the material, we desired this material world.
We desired this material world.
So that's why we're here. And Krishna created it, right, for us to experience it. And he can take it away. Like right now, everything can disappear and we can go back if he wants to. And
if we want to.
If we want to. But the question is, why did he design it in this way? He loves us. Yet it is so, what we're seeing today, and we know it's going to get even harder as how Kali is going to be. Why
it is a very difficult task of Krishna. Do you think the government is happy when they have to build prisons in society? Do you think they do it? with great joy in their hearts. The government builds prisons not because they want people to be imprisoned, because they realize that this experience is necessary for someone to evolve their consciousness. Krishna racks his brain to think, how can I help them to come back to their original consciousness? So Krishna creates thousands of planets, thousands of universes, thousands of different species of life, thousands and thousands of different situations, because Krishna is racking his brains. How can I put them in exactly the right situation which will help them to realize? Krishna is working overtime. He's working hard. So we think that Krishna is trying to trap us. But the amazing thing is, Krishna is actually trying to get us out. We are trapping ourselves. So the material world, it can be over in a second. It's not so hard to get out of the material world. Someone may say, but Maya is so powerful, Maya is so enchanting. But what does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita? Devi hyesha gunamai mama maya duratyaya. My Maya is very difficult to overcome. But then he says in the next two lines, Mameva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. By just making that one choice and saying, from this day on, Krishna, I'm yours. Finished. In one moment is finished. They asked Prabhupada, how long does it take to become Krishna conscious? He said, in a moment. Finished. But it may take many moments to get to that moment. So it's as simple as we want to make it be. Prabhupada said Krishna consciousness is so simple. Confirmed. It's so simple you may just miss it. Simple for the simple. So we have to become simple. You see, Vrindavan is the playground of God. So what's the qualification to enter into a playground? You have to be a child. So you have to be innocent and pure like a child. So we're searching for that innocence, that purity, and then immediately material life is terminated.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances, Maharaj. The topic was pearls of wisdom, and I'm sure there were many pearls of wisdom we got enlightened with. Thank you very much, Maharaj. Maharaj, this question is regarding the analogy you gave in the first part of a hospital full of nurses and a hospital full of doctors.
Yeah.
Now, as a practitioner of spiritual life, when we read Bhagavad Gita or spiritual text for that matter, many times the highest philosophical perspective is flashed right in front of us, which please correct me if I'm wrong, I may relate it to going to the doctors without going to the nurses, like the lower...
Very transcendental, very high spiritual
teachings is which actually we hear, they're just... And so we might end up, with full enthusiasm and, okay, I don't need these nurses, I'm just going for the doctors. And then as years pass by, reality blows at our face, and then, okay, this wound actually needed some Dettol, I needed a nurse and I too quickly gave it up. And then when you go to the nurse, you feel, no, actually I made a mistake coming in, I'm ready for the doctors. So am I communicating with... So this dilemma inside a sadhaka...
So therefore in spiritual life we need the practical and the transcendental. Most people when they practice Krishna consciousness, either they focus on one or the other. But we need the practical. We need to know we're here now, we're living in 2024 in Dubai. Tomorrow is Monday morning. You'll go to work. I won't. I also go to work. No, but you'll go to work. Then you have decisions, you have situations. You need to know how to navigate that situation. There's practical considerations. But then in the back of your mind, that transcendental goal should always be there. So how do you live with this practical and transcendental? That's why the battlefield scene of the Bhagavad Gita is so relevant. Because on the battlefield, the ultimate is very important because at any moment you could die. But also the immediate is very important because there's a war that's about to start. So the battlefield signifies the place where the immediate and the ultimate are equally important. And that's how we should live our life, because this is a battlefield. So therefore, on the battlefield of life, remember, Kurukshetra is not just a place in India. This is Kurukshetra. Yeah, don't throw any brahmastras at me, no? This is it. This is Kurukshetra. And therefore, the immediate and the ultimate have to come together. That's the art. Good luck. No,
Before we proceed, sorry, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Have you finished answering you?
I finished, yeah. I think Prabhu wants further, but we'll have to take it into round 2.
Yeah.
How do I know when we're ready for the ultimate? No, the ultimate begins now. It's not that you do practical for 25 years and then you do ultimate for 25 years. Ultimate and practical are going on side by side. That means tomorrow you have family, tomorrow you have a job, tomorrow you have to figure out how to make Krishna part of your day-to-day life. And at the same time, in the back of your mind, you got to realize time is ticking. So both have side by side.
Before we proceed to our Pit Prabhu, we'd like to give preference for those who are attending our sanghas for the first few times. So especially now from the back, we've had a lot of chances up front here. So is there any from the back? Okay, we will come to you very shortly. If you can just raise your hands if you have any questions, okay. I've seen you. Okay, see. Arpit Prabhu, please.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah, if you keep like this.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, that's much better.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, thank you so much for the amazing insights. My question was related to a social existence which we see. So I'm giving an example of caste system, the way it exists. So I'm giving India's example. So we know that Shri Krishna mentions about caste system. He mentions Chaturvarnyam Maya Srishtam. So Maharaj wanted your guidance on understanding that, because we know that in the current situation, sometimes especially we have come across questions, and one of the question is that God himself has made caste, and look what this has resulted in. So how do we understand that using Bhagavad Gita?
Thank you so much, yes. So in the present day India, we see a lot of exploitation based on caste. Krishna himself gives the reason, because the original division of caste was based on guna karma vibhaga sha. The divisions of caste are based on one's quality, one's inclination, one's activity. But what we're seeing today is that people are simply classed based on janma, based on birth. This is a huge deviation. What we're also seeing in the world today is that caste system has become a hierarchical system. Actually, the original Varnashram is not necessarily a hierarchical system in the sense that all Varnas are equally respected. It's not that one is higher than the other. All are equally respected for their contribution to society. So these two major deviations, the basis of the caste system and the hierarchy of the caste system, means that in India now today we have this perverted system. Therefore, if you have an eye and it's diseased, then the solution is not to pluck out your eye, but the solution is to cure the disease, because the eye has great value. And so the system that Krishna has given, Maya Shrishtam, Krishna says, it's my creation. It's very, very powerful. It's very scientific. And it's actually very, very beneficial if the basis and the functioning of it is conducted purely. And that's what we're trying to do in the Krishna consciousness movement. We're trying to give everyone an opportunity to understand Varnashram in a proper way, so that they can achieve their goals in this life and achieve the ultimate goal. Like that. Is that okay? Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hello. Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a nested questions to seek your insights on, if I may ask. So the first question is, though teachings of Krishna have been around, in the world for 3,000 years, we see that misery, pain and sufferings are going or increasing more and more only in the world. So how do we address this when, the teachings are so widespread now?
Teachings are there, but no one's following them. That's the problem. Teachings are there, but who is reading? How many people have read Bhagavad Gita? And of those who have read Bhagavad Gita, how many have understood Bhagavad Gita? And of those who have understood Bhagavad Gita, how many are actually living it in their life? Therefore, the teachings are there, but people are not utilizing the teachings. Therefore, we have to encourage.
And the follow-up question is, since we spoke about hypocrisy at the start of the session, but is the Krishna spirituality is the only path towards spirituality? Because there are other paths also, like Buddhism, Jainism, or there are some people who don't follow any spirituality per se, but they might be following the righteous path per se for that matter. Thank you so much for it.
Thank you so much. Yes, there are many world religions, and I mentioned that every religion has come down at a different time, place and circumstance to offer a means of spiritual elevation for those people. And therefore in all spiritual traditions, if followed with sincerity and purity, one can get spiritual elevation. So we are not sitting here in this hall saying every other religion, every other religious practitioner is doomed. No. If they practice with sincerity, they'll also make progress. So everyone can make progress according to their tradition. However, we do say that within this Vedic teaching on objective analysis, the detail and what is offered in terms of the closeness of a relationship with God, this you may not find anywhere else. Is that okay? Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Here.
Yes.
Here. Here. Can I see?
Okay, yes, all right.
Okay, so I want to ask Keshava Swamiji, so how you look at yourself? I mean, like you look at yourself as a soul or a body?
How do I look at myself? Do I look at myself as a body or do I look at myself as a soul? I don't know. Most times I look at myself in the mirror and what do I see? Here, look, I'll be very honest with you. I don't sit in front of you as someone who has understood everything. Just like you, I'm also on the journey. And there are days when I also go back into materialistic ways of thinking. And then again, I have to bring myself back and reconnect with that spiritual vision. So it's hard to answer that question because what happens during the course of our life is that our consciousness is fluctuating and our vision is fluctuating. But what happens over a period of time is although things are fluctuating, the general trajectory of your vision is going towards the spiritual. And therefore, That's what I'm trying to do.
And to follow up this question, so there is a concept called detachment that we are discussing about. Okay, so people are mentioning that families, children and all. So I want to ask how we detach ourselves from this body and just witness our body. What are the changes that is happening inside?
So how do you detach yourself from this body and detach yourself from all the functions of the body? Yes, that means you have to deeply understand that I'm a spiritual being. How do you understand that you're a spiritual being? Therefore you have to read spiritual knowledge. You have to practice spiritual processes like chanting. You have to associate with spiritual people. And what happens through all of these practices is that your ego, your sense of who you are, begins to change. And so that is not something that will just happen overnight. Gradually, that ego goes from being false ego to real ego. Real ego means to understand I'm a spirit soul, I'm a servant of Krishna. Is that okay?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
This is a long, okay. Yes, okay, yes, Ambika.
This is a very important question for new guests. I have a very dear friend here and she wants to know if you can tell us about the origin of Bhagavad Gita and who spoke and wrote the Bhagavad Gita.
Who has, I didn't catch it. Who has written the Bhagavad Gita, is it? Who wrote the Bhagavad Gita?
Who spoke the Bhagavad Gita?
Who
Who wrote the Bhagavad Gita?
And who brought the Bhagavad Gita?
Wrote. W-R-O-T.
Wrote. Yeah. Who spoke the Bhagavad Gita and who wrote the Bhagavad Gita? Okay, thank you so much. So the Bhagavad Gita has different frames of conversation, but essentially Dhritarashtra is a blind king. He's in the palace. And this war of Kurukshetra has broken out. And in the very first verse of the Bhagavad Gita is mentioned, Dhritarashtra uvacha dharmakshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsava mamaka pandavascheva kimakurvata sanjaya. Dhritarashtra asked his secretary, Sanjaya, what is happening on the battlefield? And then basically it's explained that Sanjaya narrates the entire scene of Kurukshetra, and Sanjaya also narrates the whole conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. So the Bhagavad Gita is spoken between Krishna and Arjuna, but it's narrated to Dhritarashtra, who's in the palace at Hastinapur. And the whole incident is documented by Vyasadeva, because the Bhagavad Gita is one chapter or one section of the Mahabharata. And that Mahabharata was compiled by Vyasadeva with the help of Ganesh, like that. Is that okay?
How would you explain to 8-year-old?
Oh yes, sorry, I saw you now. Can you say it again?
How would you explain the Bhagavad Gita to an 8-year-old?
How would I explain the Bhagavad Gita to an 8-year-old? You're not 8, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That explains it. I would explain the Bhagavad Gita to an 8-year-old by telling you that the Bhagavad Gita essentially tells us 3 things. Number 1, I am a spirit soul. Can you say that? Number 2, there is a God.
There is a God.
And number 3, I have a loving relationship with Him. That's it. That's what the Bhagavad Gita teaches you. So next week you have to give the class. Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. First of all, I'm deeply obliged and honored to have you I've been waiting many moments to see this moment of seeing you live in person. I usually come to ISKCON Damodardesh class, but I've never come to an ISKCON Damodar class before time. It's been 6 p.m., but I came at 5:45 to see you witness live.
Oh, okay.
I'm honored and grateful to have you seeing live. So I think I've been waiting for moments, and I've been hearing your audio podcast almost on a daily basis for almost a couple of years. And mentally, I framed up in my mind that I've been in the pursuit of material desires, but there is a snail-paced spiritual progress within me, wherein I'm doing my 16 routes and reading a bit of Bhagavad Gita, attending some of the classes.
Wonderful.
But in heart, I've always been hearing it, and I felt that you should be my Diksha Guru. And I've been reaching, I went into Bhaktivedanta Manor, reached your website, put it into contact us, but couldn't get through in. But I really seek and hope and bless from you that one point in time I look forward to be a part of getting Diksha from you, and I would like to see how I could progress in that path. May not be immediately, but in 3-4 years since that you're traveling, I would really like to look at that progress and see how can I get connected with you. So I would personally like to get connected, and would be honored and humbled if you could be in touch and show me the right path and way.
Okay, thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
No question?
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
So I'm just coming around. I'm sorry, I'm coming to the front. Unfortunately, we are reaching the very last fag ends, and we have fully run out of time. I see a lot of regular hands going up. Unfortunately, our devotee youth, we won't be able to take any more questions. And Maharaj, we'll take 2 more questions,
Sure.
and you can fast track through them if you have to.
All right.
Thank you, Maharaj. Rishi Prabhu, just.
Thanks, Maharaj, for all your profound explanation. I will continue to play the role of devil's advocate to add humor. As Bhagavad Gita says that after 8.4 million births, we get this most valuable human birth. So why to waste it on chanting 2 hours every day and restraining my senses rather than enjoying a material world?
So therefore, one must realize what is the best use of a human body. You see, here I have an iPhone, right? It's an iPhone 13, simple living, high thinking. I could use this iPhone as a door stopper. Would it work? Yeah, it would work. I could use this as a door stopper, no problem. It will do the job. But if someone sees me do that, they'll look at me and think, Bhagat, you can do something much better with this. And therefore, yes, you can use your human form of body to eat, drink, be merry, enjoy, pursue all types of gratification of the senses. But at the end of it, you may find none of it made you happy. The human form of life is a great opportunity to understand who we are. Dharmo hitesho adhiko vishesho dharmena hina pashubhi samanaha. Human beings and animals have 4 activities in common. They all eat, they all sleep, they all mate, they all defend. But the human has one extra thing that animals can't do, and that is the opportunity to ask, who am I? Dharmena hina. And if you take that out, pashubhi samanaha, then you're just like an animal. Don't take it personally. So yes, this is why we chant every day. Is that okay? Has the devil been converted? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Straight in front of you. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, what to do?
So this is more of a personal question, and since I have the opportunity, I'm asking this. So, and this is more from a professional perspective rather than spiritual. So, you have worked for a couple of years, you have reached a point, and then you think, okay, what next? And in professional setup, in today's time, you will look for a mentor. And I've been looking for a mentor, and after reading, I thought, who can be a better mentor than Krishna? Because he was a great mentor to Arjuna. And that's when I ended up buying a Bhagavad Gita, which was my personal, my family and everyone will have.
Yes.
And I Googled and I'd say, okay, which is the best English version of Bhagavad Gita which I can look at. There was obviously one from ISKCON, but there was another one which I have. And then I have this book. Whenever I'm traveling, it's in my laptop bag. I'll look at it. I'll try to read it. But I haven't made much progress. And you'll start from first chapter and you'll go to third, fourth, and there will be gaps of months, and then you'll begin again. Now, for someone who is looking at Bhagavad Gita as a mentor or as something where you can look, how do I approach it? Is there certain chapters, certain slokas which you need to read? Do you need to read it again and again? Or you are not able to move, then you find for someone who has done it, read it many times, and then you go. So what is...
How do you make the most of your reading of the Bhagavad Gita, basically? 3 things. Number 1, read the Bhagavad Gita systematically every single day. Number 1. Number 2, read the Bhagavad Gita with the help of someone who has understood the Bhagavad Gita. And number 3, don't simply read the Bhagavad Gita, but do other spiritual practices which apply Krishna's teachings in your life, because then you will get a deeper understanding of the literature. So if you do those 3 things, you read systematically every day, you read with the help of someone, and you read with a view to apply and change aspects of your life, then very, very quickly you'll get the full benefit of the Bhagavad Gita. It's okay? All right.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, this is the last one, huh?
Hello?
Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear
one
me?
more.
Sir, I would like to, first of all, thank you. Sorry. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for enlightening this spiritual guidance. My question is the one which earlier Ms. Mataji had asked about the free will, surrendering to Krishna and the free will. So if something happens good in our life, then, someone, a third person who's responsible, let's say. So he became or she became the messenger of God, and that's why this happened in my life.
They're the messenger.
And then when
karma.
the bad thing happened, that also becomes like there is someone who's behind all this. Because of that, something has happened. So, as you said, the free will. What about the free will of those 2 people? When Krishna is controlling everything, so when something good happens, he's sending that messenger. So it means he's controlling everything. Then where is the free will of our free will over here?
Okay. So for example, if Prabhuji comes to me and hits me, I wouldn't hold it against him. So say Prabhu comes to me and hits me, then that's my karma, right? Because nothing happens by chance. And he's just the messenger of my karma. But now your question is Krishna forcing him to hit me because I need to experience that karma? So this is why Krishna is completely inconceivable. Because what Krishna arranges is for one person to utilize their free will in such a way that they direct the karma that someone else is meant to receive. There's no, it means Krishna is just he's just creating the synchronicity. So if he came to me and punched me, it's not that Krishna is controlling him. He had the desire to do that. So what Krishna did is he put someone in front of him so he could do that who deserved to receive that. But he's still responsible for his action, so he'll get the karma.
Okay, so
Does
he knows how to connect those people around
Krishna
us.
is connecting. Krishna is
Supreme.
Yeah, he knows. He's got his finger on the pulse. He knows everything.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Is that
Thank
okay?
you. Thank you.
Prabhuji, I have a question, Hare Krishna. This was actually asked before. It's a bit of a long question. Read it out very quickly, okay? It's a bit of a problem in my approach to life. And I I don't particularly subscribe to a religion. Okay. I think of all my family members, I'm probably the least. I don't utilize my ISKCON membership card as frequently as the others, perhaps. But I follow a different type of sadhana where my routine involves getting up. I'm the part of the 5 a.m. club, and I meditate and I seek wisdom in other forms. I don't necessarily believe that God or Krishna wants you to pray to him or love him per se. I think that's a root that comes about as a side effect. I truly believe that God resides in all of us. And the purpose to life is self-realization. Now, Shyam had alluded to this, but he curtailed my question, and therefore the import was thus not really felt. I believe that man without ego is God, and God with ego is man. We just have to realize this. And once we do, then we begin to see the humanity in others and the humanity in life. And that's when compassion prevails. And then the divisions disappear. So essentially, in doing so, the process of self-realization, which comes through a process of meditation and wisdom, and you gain wisdom through the Bhagavad Gita, that is probably an ultimate source, but you come closer to the realization that there is one cosmic force, one prana, and that prana has many names. It has Krishna, it has Allah, it has Christ, whatever you want to call it. Now, my question to you is, as perhaps a seeker or a misplaced seeker, is my journey correct? Is my understanding correct, or have I got it all wrong?
Thank you so much. Wonderful question. I don't know how I'm going to do justice to that question at 9:13 in the evening. But let me share with you a few ideas. In the history of India, in the history of Indian spirituality from ancient India, there have been generally two schools of thought. One has been the school known as Advaita, or the school of oneness. And then there's been the school of Dvaita, or duality. And they have coexisted for generations. The Advaita school of thought tells us everything is one, and that ultimately we're all one. And that oneness, in that oneness, we find harmony, and we find all of this material inebriety disappears. And the Dvaita school of thought tells us that while there is a oneness between each one of us, there is also distinction. In other words, the Dvaita school will tell us that the real goal of life is not peace. The real goal of life is love. And love can only occur when there is exchange. And exchange can only occur if there are individuals. And so the Dvaita school of thought will tell us that we are all eternally individual. God is an individual. We are all eternal, individual souls. Krishna says to Arjuna on the battlefield, "Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be." Because this eternal individuality allows for the exchange of love. And so, which path do we follow? The great saint Sri Chaitanya, he actually harmonized both philosophies. And he came up with the philosophy of Achintya, Bheda, Abheda, Tattva. He said we are simultaneously one and different. So there is a sense in which we can see the oneness of everyone in quality, but to also understand that we are different. But that difference is not something that should create distinction or animosity or some kind of conflict, but that distinction should allow us to exchange love, to exchange service, and to have relationships which fully satisfy our heart. And so my advice, humble advice to you as a spiritual seeker, would be to continue reading, to continue questioning, to continue exploring, and also to continue to practice. Because spirituality is not simply understood through philosophical endeavors. Spirituality in its deepest sense is experienced through a transformation of consciousness that comes from spiritual practice. And so that may be something that we can all do. Some thoughts. I hope that helps in some way. Thank you very much. So thank you very much, everyone. My God, you all sat here. I think you should give yourselves a big round of applause. That was a long session, but I hope you got something out of it. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.